Rahsaan New York Thomas.
Bruce Wallace, how are you, sir?
As I live and breathe. I've always wanted to start saying that. How did it sound? As I live and breathe.
It sounds like you're living and breathing.
Okay, so check on both of those. Welcome to your first go at the Ear Hustle Sleeper Hits. Yes, let's call it that.
I'm a little nervous, Bruce.
You should be. This is the high stakes, high responsibility. It's like med school boards or something like that.
What if this episode comes out and people still sleep on it?
Well, that's what we're trying to correct. Just a quick refresher if people haven't been following along. We are now close to 120 episodes into Ear Hustle. We've been making it since 2017. You've been involved almost since the beginning. You're certainly adjacent since the beginning. You were over at San Quentin News when it started.
Yep.
And so we've made a lot of episodes. It's been a number of years, and there are some episodes that we tend to forget about as a team. There's like a handful that we talk about all the time when we want to think back to like the ones we like the most or the best episodes, ones we'd recommend people starting with. But then in the archives, there are also these episodes that we kind of just forget about when you make, 20 or so a year. So we're revisiting some of those. Each member of the staff is looking through the archives and thinking about ones that they wish had gotten more attention.
And for me, this one right here is one I even slept on because it was made during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, the ELSO staff was locked out the prison.
Yep.
And so normally I'm heavily involved in the editing and I hear the final product.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, it was produced on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
And the final product didn't get to me for I think a year and change later.
Right, because that was one of the many things that was sort of on hold was the process by which we got episodes back into the institution, which was a strange thing for a while that you would hear them out on the streets a lot faster you'd hear them than you'd hear them in San Quentin, where most of them originated.
And by the time they came in a batch instead of one episode at a time. And so in that sea of episodes, I felt like I didn't really pay attention to this one that much.
Yeah, and I wonder why it sort of has been that it's been a sleeper on the outside as well. Maybe because it was kind of a departure. And what it was, well, we'll hear more about it, but we did it for the anniversary of George Floyd's death. And I think the general concept we'll hear soon was just, we talked to a police officer and some formerly incarcerated people about their first encounters with the law or their roles as the law. I can't actually remember more than what we asked there, but it was very timely, but it was different than what we normally do. We very rarely do like current events.
Yeah. And also I felt like it was one of those episodes that we were doing from the outside. And I think I called in.
Oh,
and
okay.
So it's different, a totally different process, totally different way of making it. But it's an episode that for like one of the few times was not made in San Quentin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
and a guy interviewed in December is in it. And so this is like the third episode of ELSO that he's in. I wonder if he's like is that a record or something?
Oh, yeah. I don't know who's been on the most. But 3 is good. And who is this guy? So we can listen for him when he comes in.
Troy Talib Young.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's in this one.
He's in, he would have been out by then.
He was out by then, yeah. But he's also in Tired of Running, season 5, episode 43. And he was in episode 44, Nobody Comes Back.
Mm-hmm.
And so now he's in this episode, which is Crack Windshield.
And I think he's sort of like a sleeper guest. We forget how much he's been on the show.
I didn't realize he was in so many episodes. This guy co-hosting.
That's right. Cracked Windshield. It is episode 59, originally dropped in season 7, May 26, 2021. And one of the reasons, of course, that we're revisiting this episode now, not only have you chosen it as your sleeper hit, but the anniversary of George Floyd's death is once again come up May 25th. So this is going to be 5 years since his murder. And so it's a timely episode to revisit.
Yes. And I say not murdered, martyred.
Martyred.
Yeah, because his death at least brought a little bit of change. Mm-hmm. And a lot of attention to a huge problem.
Yeah. It must have been so interesting to experience that all from inside. That was such a kind of watershed moment out here. I remember it, it felt
Oh yeah, I think we're gonna do that in the second half of the episode. So let's listen in and see that.
Okay. And so we'll listen to the first half, then at the mid-roll break, you and I will hop back in and share some thoughts, and then we'll listen to the second half, and then hop back in and wrap it up.
Sounds good. Let's go.
Hi, this is Sahara Corey. I'm an Oakland-based artist, and I'm an Ear Hustle listener. The following episode of Ear Hustle contains language and content that may not be suitable for all listeners. Discretion is advised.
One evening, I was going to Walmart. I left about 8:30. It was dark. Came out, got in my car, forgot to turn my lights on, going down the streets. Got pulled over by the police. Back in the day, I might have even ran from them or whatever. Now, I didn't panic. I knew that I had my license, my registration, and insurance. I hadn't committed no crimes. I was 100% legit. I knew I was good. This day and age, especially an older black man, know better than to do anything stupid. You keep your hands on your steering wheel. No quick moves, no funny moves. Just be real respectful. Yes, sir. No, sir. You don't want to do nothing stupid. If you look around, you can look in society today and you see that they're killing us for no reason, just because they can. They put their knee on your neck for 10 minutes and with their hands in their pocket, just chilling on your neck. With people telling you, you're killing him, you can't breathe, you can hear him, can't you hear him? Man's crying for his mama, can't breathe. What can you do? Two other dudes sitting on his back. So I don't want to be that guy.
And they say, I don't want to be a martyr right now. I'm trying to live this life right now.
Did too much time in prison to come out here and get killed by the police. All the battles we done fought in there behind them walls and then come out here and get killed like that, this is a waste of life. So we got to be smart about it.
This episode is coming out the day after the 1-year anniversary of the death of George Floyd at the hands of a police officer.
I remember coming across that video, just scrolling through social media. And the crazy thing is, I didn't realize that he had died to the next day.
God, that idea of like scrolling through social media and having videos like this pop up, it's so complicated.
And it's just a trip because I've seen so much of that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't like watching videos of cops abusing, black people. But once I had realized that he died, it kind of fucked me up. But I definitely wasn't going to go back and watch it.
Ugh, Earlonne, I feel you on that. Well, for the anniversary of Floyd's death, we wanted to do something a little bit different on the show.
Today, we're talking about cops, the first time we interacted with them, and whether those relationships can change.
I'm Nigel Poor.
And I'm Earlonne Woods. And this is Ear Hustle from PRX's Radiotopia.
At the top of the show, we were hearing from Ray Ford. He had been out of prison for just over a year when he got pulled over for not having his lights on.
So they pulled me over. Police come to my car, license, registrations, insurance. I gave it to him. He went back to the squad car and ran my name, came back to the car. He says, Mr. Ford, are you on parole? I said, yeah. He said, for what? I said, murder. He said, get out the car, get out the car. Hands on your head, hands on your head. Get your hands behind your back.
Getting pulled over as a black man is one thing, but getting pulled over as a black man on parole, that's a whole nother situation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you are on parole, the rules are really different. Police have the right to search you and your property anytime.
And if you, let's say something wrong, do something wrong, they see something wrong, you can go back to jail.
So Ray knew this could go badly. But what happened next really surprised him.
They set me down at the bumper for about 45 minutes and asked me questions about the yard, about the board. Well, what prison were you in? What are you doing? How did you get out? Why are you out? They were hungry for information. They didn't even really care about me not turning my lights on when I turned the corner. They were more interested in how the board worked, how the yards worked, how the blacks got along with the Hispanics and how the Hispanics got along with the whites. They was intrigued. They was really intrigued with a man serving that much time in prison and coming home and driving down the street, minding his own business.
Without his lights on.
Yeah, well. He said, "You're the first person that I pulled over that's ever been out on parole for murder." I said, "Well, you just keep pulling people over and you're going to find more of us because they're letting us out. We're doing our time. They're coming home and we're doing good things in the community." And once it was all over, they gave me back my information, told me to leave. Didn't give me a ticket, didn't give me nothing.
Both Earlonne and Yaya, what was your first encounter with a police officer?
Well, shit, I mean, if you say first encounter, you speaking as a kid when you looked up to them, when they were police and you probably wanted to be a police or a fireman. I was in sports, and especially as a juvenile, a young dude, our sponsors were the LA sheriffs. And there were certain detectives that used to, be in our life a lot.
I remember we had beat cops, and they would walk around the block, and they would stop and talk to members of the community and everything.
That's our producer, John Yaya Johnson.
They would even give us like little plastic badges. And so we would run around like we were junior police and stuff. And then slowly that changed.
Once I hit a specific age, I was being put on that car.
Like how
regularly.
Old? Yeah.
I would say 11. You know what I'm saying? Like regularly just put, the police would see us hanging out and just put us on the car and just search us and all that. And we just kids,
I remember being like 9 years old, and our beat cop changed. His energy was different. He walked different. And one day when I was walking to the store, he asked me to come here. And he pointed to his pocket, and he had some pens in his pocket. He said, "You like these pens?" And I was like, kind of confused why he would ask me why I like pens, right? He said, "Man, you can have one of them, any one of them you want. You can just grab it." And I didn't know anything, at 9 years old about what was going on. He said, "Come on, man, come over here and get one of these pens." There was something about his energy that I didn't like, and I ran. And it was years later that I was watching TV or something, and I saw an officer tell someone to reach for something, and when he reached for it, he pulled out his nightstick and busted his head open. So I don't know if that's what he was intending to do with me, but I got negative vibes when he asked me to reach for something that didn't belong to me.
How old were you?
I was 9. And from that point on, I didn't trust that beat cop.
Naja, did you get pulled over by the police between the age of 5 and 18?
Actually, I never told you guys that I was arrested by misidentification and really beat up by the police when I was 16. Yeah.
How did you feel?
It was horrible. They told me they were going to rape me. They threw me in the back of an unidentified car, drove me around Boston, wouldn't let me make a phone call. It was horrible. Yeah, that changed how I felt about the police. Yeah. And that made me think like, wow, they had no empathy. They just wanted to really scare somebody.
That's a trip that you'd have to go through that. I mean, and you would think the people that's there to serve and protect didn't.
No, they wanted to intimidate and scare a kid. Well, 16, I don't know if that's a kid.
That's a kid. And did that change your perspective?
Well, It definitely changed my perspective on people and people's lack of empathy. Because, like when the cops were dragging me down the street and I was screaming for help, people were just, cheering them on. And I mean, it was a long time ago, but I remember there was this one guy who tried to help out and do something, but everyone else was like rooting for the cops, not for me.
It was like you were the bad guy.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I had that feeling.
Oh, yeah? When was that?
It was when I was 9. And I know I've told this story on the show before, but I got arrested for lifting up one of those train crossing signals.
I hate the story.
And the crazy part is I was trying to help. You know what I'm saying? Because it was stuck and cars was trying to get by. But the cops picked me up and put me in the back of their car. And all I can remember was crying.
This is what I keep coming back to. It's this lack of empathy. And it's really scary.
And for me, like I said, that's when things really changed with the cops. There was no trust anymore. And I think that's the case for a lot of people who grew up in communities like the one I grew up in.
So growing up in Los Angeles, dealing with law enforcement, we was treated less than. We weren't treated as citizens. We was treated as we had no rights, no respect.
I knew Troy Talib Young when I was at San Quentin, and he's been on the show before too.
Troy was released from prison in February 2020, and he grew up in South Central LA, just like you did, E, right?
Yep, that's right.
One of the things that put a distaste in my mouth for law enforcement, I was about 7 years old. My mother and father was having an argument outside the car. Police put up. They asked my mother if she wanted him to go to jail. She said no. The officer offered my mother the billy club and told her to beat my father. 7-year-old kid, I'm witnessing all this. Of course, moms didn't do it, so they handcuffed Pops, rough him up, throw him in the back of the car, take him to jail. He sit up in LA County jail for 30 days. Both my parents had jobs, honest people, taxpayers. They never commit crimes in their lives, but still and yet they was treated like criminals. How am I as a child to have respect for someone who doesn't show respect? As I became older, a youngster, a teenager, my dealings with law enforcement was never pleasant. Being pulled over, being put on the ground, been beat by billy clubs. They make you interlace your fingers, cross your legs, beat your elbows. So there was no love. I've never seen, growing up in Los Angeles, a LA police officer do anything productive or positive in my community. I'm not saying it wasn't done. I never saw it. 2019, I was in San Quentin. There was a police forum.
But no, I appreciate you guys. This is going to be a great forum. How's everyone doing? So today we're going to do a little bit different because I have Tony, my photographer.
You were out by then, so you and I didn't go to that event together, but I remember hearing about the barbershop forum.
Right. This one took place on the 10th anniversary of when BART Transit Police in Oakland killed Oscar Grant while he was lying face down on a train platform. And that killing really mobilized people in the community against police violence.
And so the purpose of the event at San Quentin was to try and bridge the gap between the police and the community.
Right.
And, one thing for sure at San Quentin, that they host a lot of these events where they bring people together who are on opposite sides of something and try to conduct a civil conversation about super difficult topics.
Indeed. The flagship of rehabilitation.
What touched my heart was the chief of police at that time. I think it was Kilpatrick.
Talib is talking about former Oakland Police Chief Ann Kirkpatrick.
Well, first of all, it's my great honor to be here and to say hello to each and every single one of you.
She got up and she spoke at this forum.
And I'm going to do something that you probably have very seldom ever seen. But Jack
is Jack Bryson. He was at the event at San Quentin that day, and Jack's 2 sons were close to Oscar Grant, and they were actually with him on the night he died.
And that was hella fucked up for them to witness that. So after the killing, Jack became like a full-time activist talking about police violence.
I want you to know on behalf of police, I am sorry. And I ask for your forgiveness. So, we need to stand up and say we are sorry. And we have a future and a hope together.
I was sitting in the audience, and she had apologized for all the harm that officers had done. I've never heard that. I've never heard anyone in law enforcement apologize for anything. So that touched my heart.
You are coming home. When you come home, you will have a police department, and as long as I'm your chief, I will be your chief, and you will be addressed with respect by your name. You will be given opportunity for restoration, and you will be welcomed home.
That took away some of the sting that I was holding for years. I just viewed everyone who wore that uniform up until that time as being, fuck you, you an asshole. But that changed that day when the chief of the police made that statement. You know, that was a change for me. And I got up and I spoke.
Sir, say and spell your first and last name for me.
Troy Talib Young. Troy, T-R-O-Y, Young, Y-O-U-N-G.
Talk to me, what did you want to discuss?
When the chief did, it impacted me. Actually, she just changed my life. Well, I can stop seeing my people. And I told her, I said, look, I ain't never liked the police. But what you just said changed the way I perceive officers. I need to know from y'all, how can I help get you to change?
Troy, thank you so much.
I know it's a little hard to hear, but what Talib did there right before the moderator thanked him was really surprising. I mean, Earlonne, especially taking into consideration the way he grew up and his feelings about the police.
And being in prison.
Yeah.
You know? And what Talib said was when he got out, he wanted to work within the system to bridge the gap between cops and people in the community.
And when he was released from San Quentin, he reached out to the chief of police in the Bay Area to make that offer again.
I offered to be assistance in each community to help deal with the problem of the gang issues that they have. I explained that I'm aware of that culture, and I have knowledge of that culture, and I can be some assistance. And I put myself out there to work with them. I did the same thing at the one we're talking about for Oakland. I offered to be willing to work to help build these bridges, to help create some love, some respect. I've yet to been called on. I've yet to heard it from anyone.
So basically you're saying that you have the lived experience to help build a better and safer community?
Yes.
And you're just not being utilized.
And there's many of men of color who's not been utilized to help do this.
When we come back, we'll talk to a police officer, a friend of the show's, about what he saw in George Floyd's murder.
All right. That was the first segment of Cracked Windshield from May of 2021. First thoughts, or kind of things that stuck out to you, surprised you?
I think the most surprising thing, there's a lot of surprises, that Nigel went through abuse at the hands of police.
I remember, yeah. I remember hearing that in the interview. That's the first time I'd ever heard that.
Yeah, so that's deep. Just deep. And then Kirkpatrick, the police captain, apologizing for Oscar Grant and for police misconduct.
Yeah.
That was a surprise.
Do you remember that forum? Were you there?
I think I was at that forum. I was at that forum.
Uh-huh. That seems to be, or at least today, it's become a kind of regular thing. I often hear about DAs, particularly the San Francisco DA, going in to talk to groups of folks in there. Was it back then?
Yeah. I remember it being in the Chapel B.
Mm-hmm.
I remember a bunch of people coming in from Oakland. I remember that. It was big. It was big. And
what was Talib's experience typical, you think? Or what do you think most guys, incarcerated guys who go to an event like that, what would they get out of it?
Everybody that showed up seemed impacted.
Yeah.
Because, like, taking the time to even have the conversation means that our opinion matters in some kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just big. That's the journey. But also wonder, like, sometimes it feels like they're trying to save policing.
Save policing?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
We know that calling somebody after you've been harmed doesn't keep you safe.
Right.
And we might feel better about using the system for revenge, but the phenomenons that inspire people or trap people with such little options that crime seems like a good idea are still in place. And so they need to save face, right? They need a PR move. But I also know...
So you think like a cynical maybe way of looking at it is these events are more for an audience outside than for the folks in the room?
It's definitely important to our audience outside as well. But I think there are some people who mean well and work within that force. And we have conundrums. We let things get so bad and we have to do something. Mm-hmm. And we need a fast answer. And we don't have anything else in place. And so it's a conundrum. What do you do? Like, you can't let a serial killer run around the neighborhood. You have to call the cops, right? But then at the same time, you have to keep calling cops because crime still exists.
Yeah, I do wonder kind of what the mindset is or what the mission is for the DA, for cops going in for events like this. Is some of it to sort of understand better the experiences and the sort of mindset of folks that they've been involved in, played a part in locking up?
I think people do want to, like, at least try to bridge the gaps, right?
Yeah.
To try to make policing work. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a sincere effort to do that. But, like, even when Derek got convicted, Derek Chauvin, of murdering George Floyd, and a lot of police did what they normally don't do. They were testifying against him. They were, like, condemning the action. Mm-hmm. They're like, yo, that's too far. Like, you messed up.
Yeah.
But when they did that, I felt like they were just trying to save policing.
I see.
Yeah, because at that moment...
It's not about necessarily reforming it, sort of.
Well, reforming is a way to save it, too, though. Mm-hmm. So reforms are important.
Yeah.
And they make things a little bit better. But, like, it's still a flawed logic that we solve everything with violence.
Yeah.
It's still a flawed logic. And it weighs on the psyche of a cop. He ends up becoming an enforcer when he might have went there to do some good in the hood.
Yeah. That Nigel's zeroing in on the lack of empathy displayed in a lot of those stories, and her story, but also Erlan's story. That felt pretty, I don't know if illuminating is right, but, like, you know, that sort of lack is so fundamental, lack of empathy is so fundamental in all these relationships.
I think it's hard to be a cop and be empathetic.
After a while, yeah. Even if you go in with a whole bunch of empathy, if you do, yeah, you lose it.
I mean, you just get so jaded because nobody invites you to the graduation. You don't call 911. Look at this black person graduating from school. Come on down. It's an emergency. Come check this out. You know, you get called to see the worst actions by human beings ever.
They should be called to the graduation.
Basis. We should call it. The next time I'm graduating, if somebody graduates, I'm going to call 911.
Emergency. Good emergency. This did make me wonder, listening to folks talk about their first interactions with cops, made me wonder what yours was, if you remember your first interaction with police in Brooklyn.
I can't remember my first, but I remember the feeling like cops had never did anything to me. But I remember feeling tensing up when I saw him and feeling like, what are you over here for? Because in Brownsville, it felt like the projects are weird. They face inward. They have their back to the world. And so the cops mostly patrol the streets. They don't come in the projects.
Oh.
And when they do come in the projects, it's to take somebody away that you love.
Huh.
Right?
They're not like walking the beat and walking through.
I mean, now they have housing cops in certain projects. Certain projects got so bad. They have housing cops, housing stations. I think there's one in Tilden. Like there's a housing substation, right?
Tilden is
a project in Brownsville.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you hardly ever saw cops walk through the PJs.
Unless they were going
Unless they were coming to take somebody away that you love.
Yeah.
And so I just always, and then the feeling, like there's a feeling that you catch the vibe. Like nobody in my neighborhood seemed to like the cops because when they come around, it's like, it's just a tension in the air. It's that feeling that like there's getting ready to be a riot on the yard. It was never friendly. But my one of the bad experiences I had, it wasn't my first experience for sure, but I got pulled over. And this wasn't no regular like traffic stop. They were looking for somebody who did something serious, I guess.
How old were you?
I was like 17 or 18. And the way they pulled us over was dramatic. Like cut the car off and get out the car, get on the ground, guns pointed. And we like don't know what the hell this is about. We don't have no clue, but it was hella aggressive and scary. And they searched the car and a call came over the radio and they figured out it wasn't us. And they let us go.
And do you remember what they said when they found out it wasn't you?
I do know that I was relieved and happy that they let us go, but nobody apologized.
That's what I was wondering. Did they? Yeah, they don't acknowledge that.
They just said, "Oh man, it's it's not you guys. Okay, you can go." Like, come on, dude, you need to explain this to me. Like, why did you think it was me? You just put me on the ground in my polo, right? Like, you just took us out the car. You pointed guns at us. You treated us really bad, right? And you are not explaining it.
Yeah.
And so I need to know why you mistook us. I need an apology. And if it's an honest mistake, I can respect that because you're trying to, protect somebody from something, trying to do something good, I guess.
Yeah.
But no explanation. Like, you don't even feel like you owe me an apology or an explanation.
Yeah.
The best we got was the relief of you can go now. So that wasn't a good experience. And just in general, I never felt like the kind of police abuse that people talk about, like getting beat up by the police. I never got beat up by the police. But I felt like they didn't care. I felt like anybody can kill me, cop or robber, and nothing would happen. The police wouldn't look for the killer. And I've had the experience of my brother being shot and the guy who did it living in the same neighborhood, and he never left the neighborhood. He was on the corner, and it felt like there was no conscious effort to arrest him. And I remember when they were doing this thing where they was trying to finally crack down on crime in New York. But it wasn't like doing surveillance or that stuff you see on TV. It wasn't chasing anybody. It wasn't no bounty hunters. If you jump the turnstile, they run your name for a warrant and then find out you had warrants. So you had to jump the turnstile. If you didn't jump the turnstile, you could be on the run forever in New York because they weren't looking for you. And so, unfortunately, I know this for a fact because I was on a run in New York. And these cops weren't very good. Like, you can catch me picking up my son. I'm just wandering around New York.
Living your life.
Living my life. You know what made me leave New York for California? The Daily News would not let it go. They kept putting my face in the most wanted section, like trying to force the cops to do something. But other than that, they would just knock on your door.
So that's how you ended up in California?
That's how I ended up in California. Other than that, they knock on your door. Maybe the detectives might stop by every 6 months to see if you're home. And if you're not home, they go on with their lives. And you go with you're being on a run. It's the saddest thing ever, Bruce.
Wow.
It's the saddest thing ever.
It's a lot less dramatic than they make it sound.
Oh, it's none of that Law and Order stuff.
Yeah. And then I was wondering, listening to Ray Ford's story, which I'd totally forgotten. I'd forgotten he was at the top of this show talking about getting pulled over after he'd been out. That made me wonder, now that you're out and free man out in the world, what's your feeling when a cop car pulls past? Or
well, first of all, it's a weird thing. I feel two ways. One, I'm not free yet. I'm still on parole right now.
Yeah.
And I have some cool parole officers right now, but my first one, he would remind me that I'm not free. And I had to reframe my mind because I was coming on with the wrong expectations. I thought I was free. But how
would he remind you?
Like, I would come back from doing something amazing, like from New York or some great trip where I did a speech or invited to, for a fellowship or something amazing. And I would come back feeling all good. And he'd be like, yo, piss in this cup. You know what I mean? And I never used drugs in my life. This piss test, it was a requirement they threw on me after I got out. I didn't even take NA or AA to get out of prison. So like this new drug requirement was weird, but it felt like a way to belittle me.
Yeah.
You know? And then at one point, he's going to send me back to LA just because he didn't like me. And I was like, yo, you're going to take me out of school, take me away from my job, take me away from my housing, my community support. For what? So all those things let me know that but as far as like the black and whites, the cars, police cars, they don't seem like they tapped out on Oakland. You know what I mean? Meaning like, it feels like Brownsville. Like they don't care. Like they don't pull people over. They don't bother you. It doesn't seem like something that happens, except for I think there was like a couple of days where the governor sent a bunch of police cars to Oakland. And around that time, I was seeing people pulled over all of a sudden on the side of the road a lot. But since that short period of time, I haven't seen anybody pulled over since. Where in LA, you see people pulled over every time. If you drive around for more than an hour, you're going to see somebody pulled over.
What do you think's behind that? The sort of absence in Oakland?
I'm new to Oakland, so I don't know the history.
Yeah.
I would guess the defund the police movements or the just different changing of police captains make the police feel like, well, if they want to defund it, then you defend yourself there. I'm not putting my life on the line and you want me defunded, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking it might be that, or maybe they just short on staff. I mean, it's a conundrum, right? You have to do something. And we let it get so bad and we want an instant answer. But I always tell people, if you lock up somebody for gangbanging, for gang murder, whatever, you don't stop gangbanging, right? The phenomenon still exists. It's growing, right? And the more you arrest people, the more it seems to grow for some weird reason. And then the person that was arrested, okay, he's not out here anymore, but he's gangbanging in the county jail. He's gangbanging in prison. You have not stopped it. You just
shuffled it. Not
even shuffled it, because removing him doesn't stop that gang still exists.
Yeah.
Right? If you do a sweep, it might slow down for a little while, but a lot of times you take the wrong people away, like the leadership, it creates a gang war, because now that people are within the gangs and outside, because now people are fighting for that position, that territory. And so what do we do? Like, the answer is not instant. It's not going to happen within a governor's term. It's not going to happen within a day. But I've been alive 54 years. The sooner we get started, the sooner we get past this.
It's another podcast. The next podcast we'll talk about. So where do we start? What do we do tomorrow? Stay tuned for that one.
One day at a time, man. We're doing what we do. We're getting people to see that crime is really a human thing, and that we see the humanity in each other and embrace each other. The smallest solution that I have that we can do right now, and that we are doing right now, and what you do right now, is inclusion. If I feel like part of society, I don't join a gang in the first place. Maslow has like this hierarchy of needs. And your base needs are food and shelter, but higher needs are acceptance and love. You need to feel like you belong. And so we have a country that makes people feel like they don't belong, or they're not valued if they don't have money, or if they the wrong race or whatever, the wrong zip code. When we treat people like that, then if they don't feel like they're part of this world, then they join that other world and they get the F the world tattooed on their face.
Right.
And so we just say, man, we want society, man, love, man. This opportunity's open to you too, man. This door is open to you too. We are united. We are one country. We are one love. If we just go around with that philosophy, then instead of joining a gang, they'll join a college.
Amen.
Amen.
Now we're going to take that previously mentioned break, and then we'll come back and listen to the second segment of this.
Let's go.
The country ready to mark the 1 year anniversary of Floyd. The year that shook the world.
Did you watch the George Floyd video?
Yes, I did.
What compelled you to watch it?
That's a good question. I'm not exactly sure.
This is Tom. Listeners may remember him from an episode we did a few seasons ago.
Yep, season 5, story called Tell Christy I Love Her.
For many years, Tom was a cop in Bakersfield, a town a couple hours north of Los Angeles.
Nowadays, he works for a large law enforcement agency, investigating alleged employee misconduct.
So Tom has really seen all sides of policing.
Any video, of police violence, it's a source of a great deal of ambivalence and conflict for me. I can see myself in the actions of Derek Chauvin. I've, used force including deadly force, against individuals any number of times. And so I always feel a connection when I see something like that happening. I guess one of the things that disturbed me about doing that job was I began to feel an ebbing of my humanity to the point where violence became, kind of routine and unremarkable.
Yeah.
And that bothered me.
There's many reasons why I wouldn't watch that video, but one of the strongest reasons was I just didn't want to hear him ask for his mother. Like, I don't see how you could ever get that out of your memory.
I have so many things in my memory like that. It's another thing I worry about myself, is how I can witness stuff like that and be so unaffected.
Man, listening to that, I forgot how raspy Tom's voice is. It is such a visceral thing listening to him.
Right. That voice is a big part of Tom's story. In 1997, back when he was a beat cop, Tom was shot point blank in the neck by a suspect he was chasing.
But really, that's just the beginning of Tom's story, and also the story of Jason, the young man who shot him.
Right.
But for now, I'll just say that the shooting and its aftermath made Tom question everything he ever learned about being a police officer and about his relationship to the Black community he worked in.
I had assumed, really up to that point, that I wasn't a racist, that I was, completely unbiased. And so I thought, well, I need to look at myself. What I had were these feelings or impressions. Maybe I was a little less respectful to a young Black man when dealing with him than I would have been with a white suspect. Maybe I showed a little more paranoia or concern for my own safety, Maybe, I did act a little different.
I'm wondering, what was your reaction when you heard him say that?
My reaction was, okay, we haven't been crazy all this time.
Yeah. I appreciate Tom's honesty. I always do. He told us that the problem wasn't just the biases he brought to the job. It was the requirements of the job itself.
When I got in my car and went out on patrol, I drove by a white, affluent neighborhood that was part of my patrol beat, and I went straight to the minority, primarily Black community to do my work for the rest of the shift. The only time I would go back to that white, affluent community is if they called, if they had some problem, like a burglary report or a loud party. But I wouldn't spend my entire shift in that, or even a small part of it in that community, because your performance in police work is based upon how active you are, how many people you arrest, how many people have citations, how many calls you clear. I mean, that's how they figure out whether you're doing your job or not. I could drive around that affluent neighborhood all night and not see a single expired tag or, one cracked windshield. Now, I could find all of those things in 5 minutes, in the area, the less affluent area. Certainly there is bias at work here, but it's not the bias of the individual officers. It's the bias of the society that fails to give the opportunities and economic abilities to those communities so that they can afford to live a life. Because, why does somebody not pay their registration? It's because they'd rather eat, than pay their tags on their car. Why do they let a cracked windshield go? Well, it's because, again, they need to live.
I get what Tom is saying about impoverished communities of color, and people rather go eat food than pay for a tag on a car or a broken windshield.
This is Ear Hustle producer John Yaya Johnson.
But where is the empathy that comes in for those individuals who are of the cloth of law enforcement to show a little empathy, right? Why don't we extend a little latitude as opposed to compounding the problem? Because oftentimes it's traffic stops like that result in such tragedies that we witnessed in George Floyd's situation.
What frustrates me is that if you had followed me around on my career with a camera and, took a video of every, use of force that I employed, I can guarantee you would find some that you took issue with. Some you might even be horrified by. But, and I hate to keep coming back to this, we react to our training. And in reference to the trial, it seemed to me in many ways the wrong person was sitting in the defendant's chair. He is a product of what conventional society believes to be appropriate policing. Now, he went overboard, but he didn't happen in a vacuum. We train our cops to be aggressive, to fear for their lives when they're out in the community, to believe that they're the thin blue line between chaos and order. That they buy into that, like I did, should hardly be a surprise to everyone else. And, to address Yaya, nothing is gained, by putting one man on trial. Where we need to gain is when they're being trained. They have to remember people's humanity, that their job isn't a constant threat against their life.
So, Tom, if you were starting your career all over again, would you still go into police work?
I've got a rule about my life, and that is no regrets. The bad things and the good things both inform us and make us who we are. I wouldn't have empathy for the people I used to work with if I hadn't suffered the loss of humanity that job entailed. I wouldn't understand it the way I do. I wouldn't fear it the way I do.
Naj, a year ago, when the George Floyd demonstrations were spreading all over the world, you and I got on the phone with New York inside San Quentin.
And I remember asking you both whether you thought anything was going to change. And E, you sounded so optimistic.
That was the straw that broke the camel back, man. And I think it's going to be some type of resolve from this, There's going to be some type of resolve, Right now, people are really championing African Americans, you know what I'm saying? Or black people or brown people, you know what I'm saying? People are really out here protesting, man, especially up here, man. And
that's one beautiful thing I love, because for the first time in my life, honestly, Erla, this is the first time I ever seen a whole world stand up. I really feel like my life matters right now.
No, definitely. No, seriously, man, I can go down there and walk on Lady Mary. It's a whole different feel. It's almost the feel of former royalty as a king. I'm a king right now.
I'm not expecting a dramatic change. We need something new in order to have a dramatic change, and that's going to take a while.
Bruh, I think it's going to be a dramatic change, bruh. I don't think man, when you got people around the world, man, all on the same page, man, there's a problem. Something's going to get overturned.
A couple of days ago, we called Rahsaan again, and we played that tape for him. And I pointed out something that had surprised me about that original conversation.
I would even say sometimes you have rose-colored glasses on, and Erlon is the one who's usually cynical. But in that tape, that tape, the roles were super reversed. I wonder what you think of that.
I think that I don't have rose-colored glasses. I just believe in the capacity of human beings for the positive and for the negative, right? And so I think I see clearly. But as far as Erline, man, I think that he just seen like the amount of people, the sea of people that care, and he thought that was enough. And I just know it's not. Even with the Derek Chauvin verdict, being guilty and him being going to jail and that dangerous person's off the street, policing is a flawed concept where we solve everything with violence, and that creates more cycles of violence. And it really destroys people of color more than anyone else. At the end of the day, we look to solve harm with more harm after the harm, instead of preventing harm from happening in the first place with love and investments. And so,
what would you say to Erline?
Erline, you wrong, man.
Erline, do you still feel like a king?
Oh, I definitely still feel like a king. But when I walk down the street, I'm no longer on that parade float where, everybody's cheering me on, I'm back in the crowd. I think it was just the euphoria of that type of moment, and you would like that shit to last. And, it didn't last because, the next day probably the police killed someone, or I don't know, or people just going about their lives,
Do either of you think that what we do at Ear Hustle actually makes a difference in these issues?
Hell yeah, I do.
Yeah, definitely. It's about seeing the value of human beings, and we definitely show the value of human beings, that human beings have value no matter what they did or where they at.
Do you think that we should try to talk to more people who we would consider to be so completely different from what our values are? Like, would there be value in talking to people like Derek Chauvin?
I think definitely. I think you find where the commonality is and what you agree on, and then that's a place where we can agree to get change, work on change together. Because you can't change anything by yourself or with one demographic of people.
I really think that's the only way you're going to make a change, is to have those conversations with people you don't agree with.
We don't have to agree with everybody,
And I think it helps to find out why we don't agree. And a lot of times when you find out why you don't agree, it's really not that far of a gap from what you do agree on.
What question would you, both of you, what question would you ask him if you had the chance to sit across from him?
Yeah, man, I would ask him like, what did Black people ever do to you? That might be a tough way to start the conversation off, but I'm just curious. Like, what did Black people ever do to you?
What would you ask him?
I probably would ask him. So I'm just curious, man. Like, did you think that you were going to get away with that, like everybody else?
Yeah.
Oppressing people like that. Like, what did you get from that, or what is the takeaway from that for you, for him?
Yeah, you know how we have to start like interviews by getting people comfortable, so that they're gonna. What would be the comfort? Like, what would be the question we would ask him to get him in like the frame of mind to actually answer those harder questions?
What did you eat for breakfast today?
I could be
like, yeah, I had eggs too. My eggs were scrambled as well, and they had cheese on them, just like you. I'm just like you.
What is he going to learn in prison?
Shit.
Ooh, that's deep, because if you're in an environment where you're not forced to take accountability or inspired to take accountability, he might never do it. He might still be thinking he's innocent, right? He might not think he did anything wrong. I know I did.
Totally. I was thinking like how that said it took them quite a few years before they could see what they did in a different way. And he's probably not going to be any different, right?
I think at the end of the day, the realization that someone lost their life set in, and you were the main cause of that, and it might not set in if you're still on the force and you still getting paid by the force. But I think once you get put in that jail cell and you got 24 hours to think about that shit, I think it definitely changes.
I know for me, man, for a long time, man, it took me a long time to take full accountability for the person I killed and the person I shot. Because I felt like they had guns and they did this, and if they didn't do this, I wouldn't have did that, and the law says this, and all that jibber jabber. It took really meeting a mother whose son was gunned down in the same way to really get me, to really make me see what I did. That's when it really hit me. And I think if you had to face George Floyd's family and just answer to them, or just see, or just hear them out, hear their pain, that's what gets through. That's what worked for me for sure.
So you guys both, would you agree that eventually he should be in a restorative justice circle and have the opportunity to participate in that?
Of course. He should go through all that.
Definitely.
He should go through everything everybody else go through. It's not, he made a bad decision in his life. He got to deal with that bad decision.
You said to me that you didn't believe in long sentences for anyone, including him.
I don't. I don't, because sometimes those sentences can be, I got partners in jail right now with 714 years for robbery. So sentences is harsh. So I think there should be a cap on it, of course.
But regardless of how much time he gets, do you both believe that he could possibly change given time?
That's the hope. And one thing I will say too, actually, man, it's not even how much time you get, it's the quality of the time you get.
Yeah.
And so hopefully he's in an environment where they even have restorative justice or any kind of self-help groups. And hopefully he has a sentence that inspires him to take advantage of those opportunities to grow and to change.
Yeah.
And not sit around blaming the victim or feeling like a victim himself.
I know we have to wrap this up, but I will say one thing. This conversation really makes me miss coming into San Quentin.
I heard in a couple of weeks, Naj. I keep hearing that every couple of weeks. I got a great interview to do, but I'm not sure if he'll give me the interview. But if you walk over there at library with me, I'm sure we're coming back with him to do the interview.
Okay. All right. I'm going to get in touch with Sam ASAP.
That's what's up.
Okay. Great to talk to you, New York. It's really nice to spend a little time with you, even if it has to be on the phone.
It's all good. Thank you for including me. I love it. I love it.
Ear Hustle is produced by Nigel Poor, Earlonne Woods, Rahsaan New York Thomas, John Yaya Johnson, and Bruce Wallace. This episode was sound designed and engineered by Antoine Williams, with music by Antoine, Rashid Zinneman, and David Jossi. Amy Standen edits the show. Shabnam Sigmon is our digital producer. And Julie Shapiro is the executive producer for Radiotopia. Special thanks to E. Phillips and to acting warden Ron Broomfield. And as you know, every episode of Ear Hustle has to be approved by this guy here.
So this is Lieutenant Sam Robinson, the public information officer at San Quentin State Prison. I was sitting there and I was listening, right? I think someone spoke about the first time that they had an interaction with the police. And so I started going through my memory catalog and trying to figure out myself. Said, okay, what were my interactions with police? I think that every Black man has a story, right? So initially, all of my interactions with police were really positive. I remember being in high school at a bus stop and seeing cops drive by and they would wave because I knew them. I had this ground level connection with them. But I tell you, I may not have made it to corrections because I had a negative interaction with the police. And I think I was 19 and my brother would have been 11 or 12. My brother and I had went over to the Oakland Coliseum. The Oakland A's, before the season, they do a fan fest, right? Where you're able to go and get your baseball card signed or whatever the case may be. We were walking across the pathway and we saw these 3 or 4, maybe 5 little kids. They ran up behind this family. There's a mother and her son. Ran up behind him, took his baseball cards, and just ran off, right? Mm-hmm. And my brother and I saw it, and I was injured at the time. And so I couldn't chase the kids. Say, oh, man, give this guy his cards back. But it was on my mind to do that, right? Because it was just been the right thing to do. Sure enough, I make it to my car. My brother and I get inside, and we pull out of the parking lot, and I'm surrounded by police. I'm out in handcuffs on the ground, face down. The ground was wet. My brother and I are trying to explain it, and they don't want to hear anything. And I remember the mother said, yeah, it was them. Those are the guys who took my son's baseball cards. And it was a kid who may have been 10 or 11 years old who looked and said, no, those aren't the guys. Those guys had a hat. And these guys don't have a hat. After that, they let us out the cuffs. We stood up. Nobody apologized. All that was said is that you could go. And I remember, man, just feeling like crap that, here I was, first thing from my mind was doing something wrong to someone. And yet and still, here I am on the ground, and there's some kid who ultimately says that no, it's not them. That could have changed the course of my life. Instead of there being Sam Robinson saying, I approve this message, it would.
You would be Earlonne Woods.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you remember the day that the chief of police apologized to the community for the death of Oscar Grant?
I do remember that. It was Ann Kirkpatrick, the former chief of police of Oakland. There's some pretty hard guys in there who were broke down by that. They had never, ever been apologized to. And I think that goes back to what I just said. It's important when you make a mistake, if you're human with people and you apologize to them. She definitely opened the door to a completely different dialogue that day. Got you.
All right, man. And let me just ask, man, do you approve everything you just said?
I don't know now. I'll tell you this, man. I spoke from my heart, and I will say that I approve my statement in this episode.
This podcast was made possible with support from the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, working to redesign.
I remember that initial conversation that you all had around the time of the protests, pretty soon after Floyd's murder. I'd forgotten we revisited it for this episode, and you guys looked back a year later. So now here we are 5 years later.
And again, I hate being right. I got an uncanny habit of
anything you'd say differently based on the 5 years that have passed?
And no, I felt like it was 100% on point. We didn't get that big change.
Yeah.
In fact, it started to have this momentum about like taking money from policing to put someplace else and try something different.
Mm-hmm.
But the language defund the police made people feel like, well, if there's no police, who's going to protect me today while this new thing is being built?
Right.
And it felt like things went back the other way. I think their budgets increased.
I mean, it feels like, at least out in California, the sort of pendulum swung the other way. A lot of these reforming DAs got voted out, recalled. The two bills here that would have changed things, one for incarcerated people and their jobs and being basically the California constitutional being cool with the word slavery being applied to incarcerated people. That one was voted down, and a bill making stronger penalties for various crimes was approved. So it felt like in California, which we think of as a progressive place, there's definitely some sort of law and order. There's a law and order sentiment.
Yeah, I think it's just a desperation for an instant answer.
Yeah.
And now it doesn't feel like the 80s or 90s. I don't feel like I'm going to get shot. But I know if I park downtown Oakland, if I do that every day for a month, my window's going to get broke.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go into stores and they seem like they've tapped out of having merchandise.
Yeah.
They don't have anything in stock.
A Safeway in San Francisco that's been there for decades is closing down because of crime, because of theft.
Yeah, so like it's not even big crime anymore, but like the nuisance crime has pissed people off. But it's not just that, it's how it's portrayed in the media.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
There'll be like 2 or 3 like ridiculous, wild, crazy retail thefts, and it'll just show those same 2 or 3 over and over and over and over, and they make you think the frequency is 100 times more than it really is.
And also the types of crime. It's sort of like there's a feeling maybe that crime is up across the board, whereas violent crime, I think, is still trending down and is certainly lower than it was, like you say, in the 80s and 90s. But I think sort of there's a feeling when you're like the smash and grab stuff is covered on the news, it sort of radiates out and gives this impression that there's this new crime wave happening, which just isn't supported by data.
And I think the other thing is like all people that are houseless. and they some of the coolest people in the world. They seem like they protect your property.
That's right. I think, Rahsaan always says that about this encampment near us, is that that's the safest place to park.
That's the safest place to park, right? They if anyone respects your property being outdoors, they do.
Yeah.
But your first impression, if you don't know any better, is like, yo, look at all these houseless people. I'm in danger. My property's in danger. And it's normally not like that.
Yeah. Hearing that tape of you on the phone from San Quentin, May of 2021, what kind of feelings did that bring up? That would have been a year into the pandemic, and and we were still sort of wondering when we'd be able to start working again.
Yeah, I remember getting to the phone was like the highlight, because I spent most of that time locked in that cage.
Yeah.
There was yard here and there, and it'd be like for a couple of hours. But
it was a couple hours because they had to, like, each building would do yard separately, right?
Yeah, and they try to like get yard over with, basically. Like you might not get yard every day, so you're going to get a lot of yard today, right? So I forgot how long it was, but it was long. It was like maybe 3 hours sometimes, 2 hours, 3 hours. But then you might not go for another day or two. So it's really just trying to like live up to this mandatory rule of like how much yard you get a week. But other than that, you were in that cell all day, every day. And so the phones were like, they at one point they were once every 5 days. And so to get to that phone was just special, to know that people were still on the other side.
Yeah. Two other things I was thinking of. Actually, first, let me ask you, listening to the conversation with Tom, is there anything you would have asked him or any sort of things that struck you about that conversation?
No, I think they asked all the right questions. But once again, Tom is like, Tell Christy I Love Her is my favorite episode because how brutally honest Tom is about policing. And he said a line about the violence became routine and unremarkable.
Yeah, unremarkable. That word really stuck out to me.
And I can identify with that. I was just thinking about this the other day. I feel like pretty safe and happy in my neighborhood. Right? Like nobody bothers my car. You know what I mean? It feels like a safe haven. The only complaint I really have about the neighborhood I live in right now, which is used to be known as the Murder Doves in Oakland, is that they're always leaving abandoned cars around for some reason. Always abandoning cars on the block, so they're taking up parking space. The city takes forever to remove the abandoned car. But while I'm feeling like that, I realized my landlord been robbed at shotgun point since I lived there. And the neighbor across the street,
who lives in the same building.
Yeah. And a guy across the street was shot at, right, in broad daylight. And I'm so used to like worse. This feels relatively safe to me, and that's just strange. Yeah, and I just realized I got to get the hell out of there, bro. They ain't safe. What the hell?
But you're saying it feels safe compared to where you grew up?
Yeah, Brownsville, the 90s, and there's this thing about not being from some place where nobody's really paying you no attention. As older guy.
Yeah.
If I was a younger black male, maybe it's not like that. And I don't see any gang activity. I don't see any drugs on the corner. I don't see the type of things I had to walk by to get to the train station when I was young.
Yeah.
And so it feels relatively tame compared to what I'm used to.
Yeah.
But no, I don't live in a normal neighborhood. I got to save up, bro. I need a raise or something, bro. I got to get out of there.
I don't know who you would talk to about getting a raise. We'll have to talk to HR. And one other thing, listening to Tom just talk about how, it's sort of connected to that idea of the violence becoming routine and unremarkable, is just like he was tracing it back to training. Like cops need to be trained differently, which made me think of the California model and sort of how a similar thing, an attempt to retrain, is apparently underway in San Quentin and other California prisons, where they're trying to, the training that the correctional officers get is to create a relationship that's more, how would you describe it? I mean, it's certainly not...
No more us and them.
No more us and them, right.
More
rehabilitative.
Less professional, more human?
Yeah, collegial even, although that seems overstating it. But, I mean, we are seeing it in all these sort of events, but with corrections officers and incarcerated people, sporting events and all that stuff dances out on the yard. But... so there seems to be like a parallel there, but it also feels like how long does that take to actually, to really, for retraining to bear results,
Yeah, and I think that you have people who don't believe in it, so they're going to resist it.
Yeah.
And that's on both sides, right?
Right.
That's not just officers, that's incarcerated people too. And so that idea of like having those type of relationships, blurring the boundaries more, it's getting pushed back. It's definitely getting pushed back. So it's going to take a minute. But I think that in the long run, that's the fastest way to public safety, for correctional officer safety, I should say. So the fastest way to institutional safety for the correctional officer and for us is to have great relationships. And you can have those relationships without telling on people. You can have those relationships with the boundaries that need to be there.
Yeah.
We need to get rid of boundaries that don't need to be there.
Right. Anything else that stood out to you or the episode overall?
Yeah, there's a lot about this episode. First, I'm going to go back to Tom. Like, his understanding is just so deep. And like Rahsaan said, it lets me know we're not crazy. Like, it ain't just, we think this. Like, Tom is verifying, like, what we see and what we believe is true. Because it ain't like I've ever been to a police training or anything.
Yeah.
I just feel how they seem to move and for my own beliefs. But now you got somebody that was an actual cop saying stuff like, he fears that job even though he got shot. He got shot by someone, and yet he blames the job and not the individual.
Yeah.
He talks about and tell Christy, I love her, how Jason's life and his job put him on a collision course. And so he blames that those paths, the way they both were taught to brainwash to believe and think of each other as the culprit. And that's just deep, just have his level of, and he's like Zen with this stuff, man. Tom is amazing.
Yeah. And he says a similar thing about Chauvin in this one, right? He said he thinks the wrong guy was on trial, like the system should have been on trial. Obviously that doesn't happen, but it's a similar sentiment, right? It's sort of like Chauvin is a symptom of a system that's not working.
Yeah, and that reminds me too, I feel like two things. One, when the police turned against Derek Chauvin, they were really just trying to save policing, as I said earlier. But also we talked about like talking to people on the other side and trying to bridge gaps.
Oh, yeah.
And, Derek Chauvin is somebody incarcerated. And we've made moves to reach out to people on the tablets and talk to people in other places and other spaces and have them call in. When we going to hit Derek up?
You think he's on he on the tablets?
He should be on the tablets. We got to figure out where he at.
My guess is he's keeping a pretty low profile.
Yeah, he might ignore us, but who knows, man? Maybe he has a side of the story to tell,
Yeah, but we should, that conversation y'all were having at the end about sort of having those conversations with people you disagree with.
Now we got to try. I think the hard part is most of the time people like that don't want to talk to you. Or they think that because they know where you stand and you have the control of the editing process.
Right, they're not going to come back.
They're not going to let you edit them down to some bull crap.
Yeah.
Another thing I liked about this episode is, like, I was rambling on and Nigel just said, cut to the chase. What would you tell Earl? I was like, you were wrong, man. And I was just funny.
That's right.
But yeah, I really like this episode, and I don't understand why only 5 people listen to it, Bruce.
It wasn't 5.
It was 7?
I don't know. You saw the numbers recently. But it is definitely, it's one that, I'm really happy that you brought my attention back to this, because there's a lot of good stuff in there. It's a lot, because actually all I remembered being in there was the conversation with Tom, but there's so much more in there.
Oh, another thing I noticed, and this is a small thing, but it just makes me happy. Yeah, I was home.
I know, right?
Yeah, I was home for this episode.
Yeah, it's so nice to hear him pop up in there.
Yeah. Before we close out, Bruce, I just want to acknowledge that this is the 5th year since George Floyd was martyred. And I just want to say my condolences to his family. And I hope you realize that we might not have gotten all the change that we wanted, but his death, his murder, his loss, your loss has definitely made a difference.
What is didn't his daughter say, my dad changed the world?
Yeah. And when you said that, you probably were caught up with like Earlonne and those crowds that have disappeared. But know that there's still some undercurrents from that movement, from that moment. And he has made a difference, even without the crowds being there anymore.
Yep. Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, this was nice to revisit this one.
Yep. And listeners, this your second chance. You ain't going to get a third. It's California. You don't get 3 strikes. You don't want 3 strikes.
This is it. Yeah, we'll be interested to hear what listeners think if they revisit it or visit it for the first time, because I guess folks missed it the first time around. So let us hear from you. And let's get back to these old school credits.
Boom.
Ear Hustle is a proud member of Radiotopia from PRX. Radiotopia is a collection of independent listener-supported podcasts. Some of the best podcasts around. Hear more at radiotopia.fm.
I'm Earlonne Woods.
And I'm Nigel Poor. Thanks for listening.
Radiotopia.